Welcome back, and hello if you are new, my friends. I hope that everything is going really well. Possibly one of the biggest bands, I think, in modern prog metal, whatever you want to call them. Mastodon have never done a double album. So this is breaking new ground for the band. On their 9th album, they have made an 88 or 89 minute opus that is, without a doubt, I think the most extravagant thing they've ever done. So yeah, join me as I look into the world of Hushed and Grim. This album in particular is dedicated to the memory of their manager, Nick John. Sadly, Nick passed away from pancreatic cancer. He's obviously been such a big part of their life that they wanted to honour him, in a what could probably be the best Mastodon way ever, which is making an entire concept album about him. It follows a loose concept that after we die, we get put into a tree for a year. And during that year, you see all of the seasons, and that's basically meant to be a metaphor for looking back on your life. And before, I think it's Bran said that you just kind of like float off into the ether. I would say this is probably the most raw the band have sounded, especially when you look at some of the lyrics here. It's very much prevalent that this was all about losing their friend. This is probably the most complete iteration of Mastodon that we're seeing here, because there's elements from pretty much every album of theirs and new ideas that are being experimented with as well. I feel like Hushed and Grim is very much their kind of airiest album since maybe Crack the Sky. There's a lot of the vibe on this record particularly reminded me of like Siberian Divide, Pendulous Skin, and there's even kind of moments where the band kind of veer towards like Elder territory, especially on that sort of like elastic riff of Sickle in Peace, but then also some of the little moments on Gobblers of Dregs, which is later on in the album. And although there might not be any sort of boot stompers that we had from, like, say, the Relapse era, Mastodon always makes sure that the kind of like heavy metal quota is looked after, and there are some really heavy moments on here. You know, a great example of that is the crux at the end of that song. Now, I always think that psychedelia has been a big part of Mastodon's sound, but it's kind of been a little bit of an add-on at times. And I think really here, it's very much assimilated with the record. And I have to say, it's probably the most evident on this track called The Dagger, which midway through kind of moves into this sort of like Middle Eastern, like Indian feel, kind of with the rhythms and the melodies, but also with Troy's vocals like na 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 na. I think this is probably the band's, again, most cinematic piece, especially because when we get to the end of the album, which is Gigantium, you know, it finishes with this orchestra, and when you get to that final track, it's a very sort of like cathartic experience, I guess. But I have to say, one of the most raw performances, I think, from Mastodon to date has to be Had It All, which is as probably close to a ballad as Mastodon have ever come before. And Troy really kind of carries that song. Troy obviously has a very commanding tone, but then you've got Bran and Brent, which are there to kind of flank him. And that's, I think, really where Mastodon have really come into their own, especially vocally. Like, they understand when to use which vocalist. Bran's standout moment, which has to be that chorus in Pushing the Tides. Absolutely amazing song. There's definitely the most amount of guitar solos I've heard on a Mastodon record, but each one really does kind of suit the taste of the song really, really nicely. And there are some great guest performances here as well. So you've got The Beast, which features Marcus King, who's kind of like a country guitarist. And then, as I mentioned, Had It All has the Soundgarden guitarist Kim Cahill. The bottom line is this is definitely the most eclectic Mastodon album. I think it's a great representation of everything that they've come to do so far, but it's also incredibly honest, mature. Well, it's a fantastic album. You know, it's 100% going to be in my album of the years, but it does take some time. So just make sure you kind of really sit with this, just listen to it. Maybe don't do anything at the same time and really give it your full attention because it definitely deserves it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this album review. If you did, hit that like and subscribe button. It'd be great to know what you guys think of the album. Drop a comment down below and yeah, it'd be lovely to have a chat with you guys. Other than that, take care, my friends, and I'll see you very soon.